now. The awam need to know, where do we stand now? We have two narratives. And the narrative, you see, the sad thing about our school is that there's been so much taqiyya within the school that the taqiyya hasn't just been towards the outside world, where the outside world might not know exactly what people believe, etc. It's inside the sect as well. So what do I mean by that? The awam and nas, like I mentioned about Sheikh Tusi's Muqaddimah in his books on hadith, or I mentioned about what the actual 12 narratives on taqiyya, etc. They don't understand that actually this taqiyya is so intrinsically linked now with our school that divine imama, like Sayyid Ali mentioned and explained why it's an anti-Quranic position, clearly goes against the Quranic worldview. It means that we have a worldview in your school that the awam nas don't know, that imama in your school with the imams of the Ahlul Bayt is intrinsically linked to taqiyya. Meaning when they are calling towards the imama, it is a taqiyya movement. And the biggest qara'in and the biggest evidence for that, apart from our own sources where you can demonstrate it, is that the ummah does not recognize the imams made this claim. The ummah hasn't, ever has, ever will, historically, that the imams of Ahlul Bayt were ever making this claim. And I'm talking about specific, let me be precise. Specific claim, because I won't go towards the first three imams. Specifically after Imam Hussein, to Imam Hassan Askari, or to Imam Hassan Askari, Imam Mahdi. There's only us and the two Ismailis that have made this claim that imams are calling towards this imamah. Otherwise, the whole ummah has rejected it. And the reason why, for a 12er mindset, that's easy to reconcile is because if the ummah rejects it, it means the imams done their job. You're going to say, what are you talking about? It means the imam's taqiyya was successful. Matlab, the reason why the ummah doesn't accept it is because they weren't told it. When a guy came to Imam Sadiq and Imam's like, no, I'm not an imam. The Zaydiyah came, I'm not an imam. The Sunni came, I'm not an imam. The ummah's going to say the imam never said this, you're lying. We're saying, ha, imam tricked you. Yeah, you know, we're saying the imam tricked you. So the narrative of imamah, divine imamah, is intrinsically linked to taqiyya. So when people talk about al-Islah and we mention the ulama abrar theory, and people say, oh, you know, how can you say this? No one believed in this. No problem. You can say no one believed in it. You can say a minority believed in it. But I'll leave you with two lines of thoughts, two narratives. You have the traditional narrative, which has been running for as long as you want to say it's been running for. No problem. It's clearly an early belief. It's been running in the times of the early Ahlul Bayt Imams where they were condemning it from the Zaydiyah, including our own Imams, which is our narrative. That narrative is the Imams are chosen by God. That is, you have no divine appointment verses in the Quran that's explicit by Nas, but yet you have the Imams apparently claiming it and doing taqiyya from the Ummah. And only telling their khas people. And who's the khas people? People that are in Kufa, that are not even in Medina. And then the Imam ends up cursing them as well, and that's taqiyya as well. That's the whole narrative. Or you have the other narrative, which is, this is a lie upon the Imams. The Imams never claimed it. It's an anti-Quranic worldview. The Ummah has rejected it, as I explained. And even the Ahlul Bayt themselves rejected it, including the Zaydiyah. So once you have those two narratives, you will understand. Choose which one. Which one do you think, like Ali Sayyid Abidi said, which one goes in line with the Quran? You say Sadiqeen, they are praiseworthy. These are traits of those who mention the haqq, who Allah chooses. So even if they were not chosen by God, people mention the truth, like Sayyid Misa mentioned about the Sunni ulama. Imam Zayd alayhi salam done jihad by the sayf, by the sword, after Imam Hussein. And the funny thing is, Sayyid Ali Haidar and Sayyid Kamanpuri, is they mention that the reason taqiyya, I'll give you their response and reply to that as well. They say the reason taqiyya is done is because if taqiyya wasn't done, the deen would have not reached you in its form. I say this is the biggest lie that they told us, because the way that deen has reached us now, we are more confused about what is the Imam's actual position. So the person you're saying is chosen by God, how has now himself, astaghfirullah, caused the confusion. Allah says in the Quran about the Quran itself, but you can take it as a general rule. If it was from anyone else other than us, you would have seen kathir, conflictions, contradictions. Number one. Number two is the other alids. The Zaydiyah school is still in line today, and they imams done jihad by the sayf. They weren't like our imams that only focused on the deen. Their imams actually were imams of religion and jihad. And their fiqh and deen has reached them perfectly while doing jihad. And there was no concept of taqiyya. So they are the biggest evidence that this concept you made, the government didn't care if you wash or wipe your feet. The government didn't care where you put your hand. You put your hand on your side, put your hand to your stomach. The government cared about armed rebellion. Guess what? The Ahlul Bayt and the Zaydi Imams were doing it. But they still preached their deen. And their deen is preserved. We said all of this, and we have a mess in our corpus. So again, two narratives. You have that narrative of the traditional ones, divine imamah with taqiyya, or you have pious scholars that were preaching the truth and preserving the sunnah of the Prophet. The awam needs to choose, and the awam needs to know that these are your two options. So next time you think about al-Islah, think about it and put it forward to the scholars and say, Ya Maulana, is this our narrative? Because guess what? Most Maulanas don't know this is our narrative either. So it goes higher up the chain. And